The coffee cup slipped from Marcus's fingers, shattering against the tile floor of the office break room. His boss, Eleanor Winters, the notoriously stern CEO who had never shown a hint of vulnerability in the 3 years Marcus had worked under her, was standing by the window, watching couples in the park across the street with such raw longing that it felt like he'd walked in on something deeply private. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to catch more heartfelt content like this every week. Your support means everything to this channel. Marcus froze, unsure whether to announce his presence or quietly back away. Before he could decide, Eleanor turned, her usually composed face streaked with a single tear she quickly wiped away. "I'm sorry," Marcus stammered, kneeling to pick up the ceramic shards. "I didn't mean to." "Leave it," Eleanor said, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. She walked over and crouched beside him, helping gather the larger pieces. Accidents happen. Marcus had never been this close to her before. Up close, he noticed the faint lines around her eyes, the slight tremble in her usually steady hands. For 3 years, she had been nothing but Ms. Winters, the demanding executive who expected perfection and rarely offered praise. The woman who had nearly fired him last year when he missed an important client meeting because his daughter Sophie had a fever. "You were watching the couples," he said before he could stop himself. Eleanor stiffened. "I was just taking a break." "I do the same thing sometimes," Marcus admitted. "Ever since Melissa left, I find myself staring at happy families, wondering what I did wrong." Eleanor's professional mask slipped for just a moment. "How old is your daughter now?" "Sophie's 7, Marcus replied, surprised she remembered he had a child at all. "It's been just the two of us for almost 3 years." Eleanor nodded, standing up and smoothing her impeccable suit. "It's difficult, isn't it? Being everything for someone else while feeling like you have nothing for yourself." The unexpected vulnerability in her voice made Marcus look up. Eleanor was staring out the window again, at a young couple sharing a kiss on a park bench. "You could have that too, you know," Marcus said quietly, the words escaping before he could consider their impropriety. Eleanor turned to him, her expression unreadable. "That's highly inappropriate, Marcus." "I didn't mean," he began, mortified. "I know exactly what you meant," she cut him off. "And you're wrong. Some people aren't meant for happy endings." She walked out, leaving Marcus alone with the broken pieces of his coffee cup and the distinct feeling that he'd glimpsed something important beneath his boss's carefully constructed facade. The following Monday, Marcus arrived at work to find a memo in his inbox. Eleanor wanted to see him in her office immediately. His stomach dropped. After their awkward encounter in the break room, he'd spent the weekend convinced he was about to lose his job. Sophie had noticed his distraction during their Saturday morning pancake ritual. "Dad, you're burning them again," she'd pointed out, her gap-toothed smile both a comfort and a reminder of everything he stood to lose. "Sorry, Soph," he'd said, flipping the blackened pancake into the trash. "Dad's just thinking about work stuff." "Is it about the dragon lady?" Sophie asked innocently. Marcus had nearly choked. "Where did you hear that?" "That's what Uncle Dave calls your boss. He says she breathes fire." Marcus had made a mental note to have a word with his brother about appropriate nicknames around impressionable children. "Ms. Winters is not a dragon," he'd told Sophie firmly. "She's just focused." Now, standing outside Eleanor's office door, Marcus wished he had the courage of a knight facing a dragon. He knocked tentatively. "Come in," Eleanor called. She was seated behind her desk, glasses perched on her nose, reviewing documents with the same intensity she applied to everything. Without looking up, she gestured to the chair across from her. "You wanted to see me?" Marcus asked, his voice steadier than he felt. Eleanor removed her glasses and fixed him with that penetrating gaze that had made junior executives cry. "The Harrington proposal. Where are we with it?" Marcus blinked, caught off guard by the ordinary business question. "I finished the final revisions yesterday." It's ready for your review. Good. She nodded, making a note. And the quarterly projections? Completed last week. They're in your shared folder. Eleanor studied him for a long moment. You've been doing excellent work lately, Marcus. Despite distractions. Was she referring to his single parenthood or their awkward encounter? Marcus couldn't tell. Thank you, he said cautiously. I'm promoting you to senior account manager, she continued, sliding a folder across the desk. Effective immediately. It comes with a substantial raise and more flexible hours. Marcus stared at the folder, stunned. I don't understand. It's quite simple. You've earned it. But last year, when I asked about advancement opportunities, you said I wasn't ready. Eleanor's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Last year, you weren't. Now you are. What changed? He asked, unable to help himself. Eleanor stood and walked to her window, the one that overlooked the park. Perhaps I've realized that some things are more important than others. She turned back to him. The flexible hours should help with Sophie, shouldn't they? The mention of his daughter's name from Eleanor's lips was so unexpected that Marcus could only nod. Good, she said briskly, returning to her desk. That will be all. As Marcus reached the door, Eleanor spoke again. And Marcus? About what you said in the break room. He turned, bracing himself. Thank you, she said simply. The promotion changed everything. The flexible hours meant Marcus could drop Sophie off at school most mornings and be home in time for dinner. The raise allowed him to move them from their cramped apartment to a small house with a backyard where Sophie could play. But the most surprising change was in his relationship with Eleanor. The ice between them had thawed, replaced by a professional respect that occasionally hinted at something more personal. She asked about Sophie sometimes, and he found himself sharing small stories about his daughter's adventures in second grade. In turn, Marcus began to see glimpses of the woman behind the executive facade. Eleanor worked late not because she was a taskmaster, but because she had nothing to go home to. She pushed her employees hard because she pushed herself harder. And sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, she still watched the couples in the park with that same quiet longing. One evening, working late on a major presentation, Marcus found Eleanor in the conference room surrounded by scattered papers and empty coffee cups. You should go home, she told him without looking up. Sophie will be waiting. She's at her grandmother's tonight, Marcus replied, setting down his own work. I thought you could use some help. Eleanor looked up, surprise evident in her tired eyes. I don't need. Everyone needs help sometimes, Marcus said gently. Even CEOs. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded toward a stack of reports. Those need to be incorporated into Section 3. They worked in companionable silence for hours, the office emptying around them until they were the only ones left. When they finally finished, the clock read past midnight. I'll walk you to your car, Marcus offered as they rode the elevator down. That's not necessary, Eleanor said automatically. Humor me. My mother raised me to be a gentleman. A small smile played at the corner of her mouth. She did a good job. The parking garage was eerily quiet, their footsteps echoing between concrete pillars. When they reached Eleanor's sleek black sedan, she turned to him with an uncharacteristic hesitation. Would you like to get coffee sometime? She asked suddenly. Not here. Not as colleagues. Marcus felt his heart skip. I'd like that. This is probably a terrible idea, Eleanor said, more to herself than to him. Probably, he agreed with a smile. But some terrible ideas turn out to be the best ones. Their first coffee date was awkward. Eleanor arrived in a business suit, as if she couldn't quite separate herself from CEO mode. Marcus spilled his drink when their hands accidentally touched reaching for sugar packets. They talked about work for 30 minutes before Eleanor finally sighed. This isn't going well, is it? she asked bluntly. Marcus laughed, relieved by her honesty. Not particularly. I haven't done this in a long time, she admitted. Dating. Especially not with someone who works for me. If it helps, I'm pretty rusty too, Marcus said. The last date I went on, the woman spent the entire time telling me how brave I was for raising Sophie alone, like I deserved a medal for parenting my own child. Eleanor's expression softened. That must be difficult. Being seen as your circumstances rather than as yourself. You understand that better than most, I imagine, Marcus replied. Being seen as the boss rather than as Eleanor. She looked startled, as if she wasn't used to hearing her own name. Yes, I suppose I do. So maybe we start over, Marcus suggested. No work talk. Just two people getting to know each other. Eleanor considered this, then extended her hand formally. Hello. I'm Eleanor Winters. I enjoy classical music, spicy food, and long walks in the park across from my office where I definitely don't stare at happy couples with pathetic envy. Marcus grinned, taking her hand. Marcus Chen. Single dad, pancake burner, and occasional giver of inappropriate workplace advice. Their second date was dinner. Their third was a walk through the very park Eleanor had watched from her window. By their fourth date, when Eleanor tentatively reached for his hand as they strolled along the river, Marcus realized he was falling for his boss. Dad, is Ms. Winters your girlfriend? Sophie asked one Saturday morning, 6 months after that first coffee date. Marcus nearly dropped the pancake he was flipping. What makes you ask that? Sophie rolled her eyes with the exasperated patience of a 7-year-old explaining the obvious. Because you smile when you talk about her. And you talk about her a lot. Do I? Uh-huh. And she sent me a birthday present even though she's never met me. Only girlfriends do that. The present had been a telescope, accompanied by a note saying that Sophie's father had mentioned her interest in stars. It was thoughtful in a way that had surprised Marcus, though he was learning that Eleanor was full of surprises when you got past her carefully constructed walls. Would it bother you if she was? Marcus asked carefully. Sophie considered this with the serious expression she wore when making important decisions. Does she make you happy? Yes, Marcus answered honestly. She does. Then it's okay, Sophie declared. But I want to meet her. To make sure she's good enough for you. Marcus laughed. That seems fair. The meeting was arranged for the following weekend, a picnic in the park. Eleanor arrived carrying a basket filled with Sophie's favorite foods, information Marcus had casually mentioned, and looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her, even before major client presentations. What if she doesn't like me? Eleanor whispered as they spotted Sophie playing on the swings. She'll like you, Marcus assured her, though his own stomach was in knots. Sophie approached them with careful deliberation, studying Eleanor with undisguised curiosity. You're prettier than in your pictures, she announced. Eleanor blinked. Thank you. Dad has your picture on his phone. He looks at it a lot. Marcus felt his face heat. Sophie. It's okay, Eleanor said, kneeling to Sophie's level. I have pictures of you and your dad too. Your father talks about you all the time. He talks about you too, Sophie informed her. He says you're brilliant and kind, even though you pretend to be tough. Eleanor's eyes widened, and she glanced up at Marcus, who wanted nothing more than for the ground to swallow him whole. Does he now? Eleanor asked, a smile playing at her lips. Sophie nodded solemnly. Are you going to be my new mom? Sophie. Marcus exclaimed, mortified. But Eleanor didn't seem flustered. She considered Sophie's question with the same seriousness with which it had been asked. I don't think anyone could replace your mom, she said gently. But I care about your dad very much, and I'd like to be your friend, if that's okay with you. Sophie thought about this, then nodded. That's okay. But you have to promise not to make Dad work late anymore. He gets grumpy when he misses bedtime stories. I promise, Eleanor said solemnly, offering her hand to shake on it. Sophie bypassed the handshake and hugged Eleanor instead. Over the child's head, Eleanor's eyes met Marcus's, wide with surprise and something that looked remarkably like hope. Their relationship progressed slowly, carefully. Eleanor was hesitant to disrupt Sophie's routine, and Marcus appreciated her consideration. They had dinner together once a week, sometimes with Sophie, sometimes alone. Eleanor taught Sophie about constellations with her new telescope. Marcus learned that beneath Eleanor's professional exterior was a woman who loved old movies, hated cooking, and had a surprisingly wicked sense of humor. At work, they maintained their professional boundaries, though the office gossip mill inevitably caught wind of their relationship. Marcus was called into HR, where he signed forms acknowledging the company's policies on workplace relationships. Eleanor faced scrutiny from the board, who worried about potential favoritism or liability. Maybe this is too complicated, Eleanor said one night, after a particularly difficult board meeting. They were sitting on Marcus's back porch, watching Sophie chase fireflies in the yard. The company has rules for a reason. If you're looking for an excuse to end this, just say so, Marcus replied, hurt evident in his voice. Eleanor turned to him, surprised. That's not what I want at all. Then what do you want, Eleanor? Because sometimes I still feel like I'm trying to figure you out. She was quiet for a long moment, watching Sophie's delighted dance through the grass. I never thought I could have this, she finally said. A family. After Richard left, I threw myself into work because it was easier than admitting how much I wanted what everyone else seemed to have so effortlessly. It's not effortless, Marcus said softly. It's work. Every day. Work I never thought I deserved, Eleanor admitted. Until you said those words to me in the break room. You could have that too. No one had ever suggested that possibility to me before. Marcus reached for her hand. You deserve happiness, Eleanor. We all do. She squeezed his fingers. So do you, Marcus. And if being with me complicates your career, then we'll figure it out, he interrupted. Together. 1 year after their first coffee date, Marcus and Eleanor stood in the same park where she had once watched couples from her office window. Sophie was feeding ducks by the pond, supervised by Marcus's mother, who had flown in for the weekend. Remember when I caught you watching couples from your window? Marcus asked, his arm around Eleanor's waist. She leaned into him. I remember thinking you were the most impertinent employee I'd ever had. And now? Now I think you're still impertinent, but I've grown rather fond of it. Marcus laughed, turning to face her. I have something for you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Eleanor's breath caught. Marcus. I'm not proposing, he clarified quickly. Not yet. I know we're not ready for that step. Relief and something like disappointment flickered across her face. Then what is this? He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver key. It's a key to our house. Sophie and I want you to have it. To come and go as you please. To be part of our family, however and whenever you're ready. Eleanor stared at the key, then at Marcus, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Are you sure? Sophie suggested it, Marcus said with a smile. She said you spend so much time at our house, you should be able to let yourself in. Eleanor took the key with trembling fingers. Thank you, she whispered. Both of you. Across the park, Sophie looked up from the ducks and waved enthusiastically. Eleanor waved back, then turned to Marcus with a smile that held all the promise of their future. You were right, you know, she said softly. About what? That day in the break room. When you said I could have this too. She gestured to Sophie, to Marcus, to the life they were building together. You were right. Marcus leaned in and kissed her, right there in the park, among all the other couples she had once watched with such longing. And as Eleanor kissed him back, he knew they had both found what they'd been looking for all along, not perfection, but the perfect imperfection of real love, with all its complications and rewards. If this story touched your heart,